You are listening to the Marc Guzman podcast experience.
So let's get into our second topic here, and it's Americans optimistic about financial futures. So every quarter, every poll, or every year, there's always a poll that's being done on what people's sentiment is about the economy, about housing, and they basically track if people are feeling positive or negative about the economy and housing. And it's very interesting. Here we have a few stats. Overall, 75% of Americans are optimistic about their financial future, whereas 19% are pessimistic. And then there was a question, do you expect to have enough retirement savings? Overall, 50% said yes. Overall, 33% said no. There was another question, do you feel that economic reporting fits reality for the average American? And this was also very interesting. So economic reporting, overall, 27% said yes, 60% said no. So obviously not a lot of confidence in the media and what's being reported out there with what people feel as if it's really happening. And so there was a poll in February that showed 58% of Californians think the current economy is in either good shape or excellent shape. 38% feel that it's not in good shape, and 3% no answer. So with this data, what does it mean for real estate?
Well, first of all, let's just delve into the whole California aspect. California in itself is a little bit of a economic bubble with respect to the rest of the United States, especially even Northern California, where a significant amount of the actual jobs are created and the income is created. In fact, many have even argued California should succeed from the rest of the United States since it has such a high economy.
We're what, the fourth or fifth largest economy if California was a country?
Correct. Yeah. To the extent where there's actually a military plans in the event that California does try to succeed from the Union.
Really?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. I looked into this because when I first heard about this, I thought it was kind of preposterous. Why would we want to become our own country? But apparently, there's actually some movement to try to take California out. Or even divide into different states. And so there's actually military plans in the event that we try to do that to bring us back. So that said, California in itself is in its own little bubble. And so it's not hard to understand why most Californians are going to be pretty optimistic about their financial future. Whereas when you take the rest of the country as a whole, the incomes are just simply not there, and that's why you see the property values are also reflected as being much lower than what you'd see in California. I think you said last week where a lot of people kind of can't understand why our property values are so high, and that we're kind of a bit of a joke because they don't know what's going on. But the big part of that equation is that most people have the income to be able to afford the higher prices, and that in turn drives the prices up.
Yeah, for me, what this poll and what this data shows me is that nothing has changed when it comes to polls and trends. People will basically, there's a lot of following the herd mentality, right? And so if overall the media is reporting that the economy is great, there's no issues, overall you tend to see people being optimistic with the economy. Yeah. Now, on the flip side, if the media is reporting a lot of negative news, you also see a lot of people reporting very negative outcomes for the economy. And we see this because at the end of 2018, when we saw interest rates jump up, and I'm talking about mortgage rates, when mortgage rates went from the high threes to the low to middle fives.
Yeah, in fact, let's put that in perspective. From the high threes to the middle fives.
Yeah, and for a lot of you viewers that have been alive for a long time, you guys remember 8-9% rates. Some of you even remember 18% rates. Yeah. So the big scare of just going from 3.8 to 5.2 rates was huge enough to where it created a lot of scare in the economy. And then when you had the Fed raise their rates multiple times last year, and especially toward the end of 2018, all of a sudden you saw people on the polls being very negative because what they were hearing on the news was very negative. Everyone started talking about a recession in 2020, and you started to hear of Payless having to close down 2,100 stores. You heard of GM basically laying off 2,500, mainly executives. I mean, you hear a lot of negative news. However, now that we have an inverted yield curve and you see short-term rates higher than long-term rates, and now that's changed, then you have mortgage rates drop from 5.2% back down to 4%. In fact, jumbos you can get for 3.8% again.
Right.
And guess what that means? Now there's positive news that maybe we may not go into a 2020 recession. Maybe it's already been priced into 2019. Maybe a recession won't hit for another 4 or 5 years. And guess what? It's not surprising that now the poll that came out in March is showing a very optimistic outlook for the economy.